Hello, namaste. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Louisa, and I am sharing today a topic which I think was always in my heart my entire life since I was a little kid, and I'm betting that it's going to resonate with some of you. This idea that we're born to kind of save the world, or that there's a desire within us to correct what we see as falsehood and distortion and power imbalances and oppression and suffering. I think for many human beings on the planet today, living today, there is inside them this seeded desire to, what I just call loosely termed, save the world. And I literally remember having that as my purpose when I was much younger. And it actually brought me a lot of distress and confusion because, like so many of you, I could look around and I could see injustice and I could see oppression, and I would try to kind of do my best in my own small way to make a difference to that, but it felt like getting nowhere. It felt like the forces of darkness were so enormous, and humanity, in my view at that time, in my early 20s, I'm thinking roughly, humanity was a lost cause, basket case. We were never going to get to the point of, I guess, what I would call a kind of utopia where we actually can live in peace and harmony. And I think this is a story that is sold to us deliberately. So we are kind of taught this. We're given the message through our education system, our textbooks, our traditional learning methods, but as well as just a sort of the general consciousness of the human collective. This message is there if you listen carefully, and the message is that humanity may well have progressed as a civilization technically, but that we have very much lost our way, that we are incapable of coming together peacefully, that there's so much division and war, and then look at the way we're degrading our planet, and how we're not responsible stewards of the land. And I believe that this message serves the dark agenda on our planet, if you might think of it as a group of beings, including human beings, who wish to essentially control humanity and control the timeline that we're on. Because human beings can create from their consciousness. This is our superpower, right? We're very creative beings. We're natural manifestors. And if we believe that we are off path and erroneous and have done the wrong thing and are doomed, we will literally create that reality. In saying that, as I have awakened to my own power and the real purpose why I'm here on earth, the deeper purpose, I've started to see that there's a whole lot of human beings right now on the planet that are defying that storyline, and we are reclaiming the timelines for humanity that have been hijacked. So the programs of fear and scarcity and lack and doom, we are reclaiming those. And when I say we, consciously, I'm talking probably about 1/3 of people on this earth. This is a figure given to me by my guides, but I've also heard it validated from other spiritual teachers that are tuning in on psychic levels and receiving guidance from our galactic family to assist us at this time to understand what's going on. So we have a minority, you could say, of beings on the planet that are consciously creating a positive timeline. There are also a whole bunch of people who are not consciously creating anything, but are nonetheless participating, because we're all participating, whether conscious or not. So those people tend to be kind of in the middle, and not very effective manifestors, because it's not focused intention. It's more of an emotional reaction to what's going on right now, and a existence in a survival mode. And then you have another group of beings on the planet, the negative beings, or service to self beings, who are manipulating the darker timelines, continuing to play them out, trying to convince humanity that we can't do it, that we are doomed, and that we need other people to save us, whether that's a pharmaceutical company selling medicine, so-called medicine, or whether it's a government that's going to tell us what to do, or it's a savior being, or whatever it is. There's a part of that negative narrative which insists that you can't affect your reality and you must subscribe to someone else's assistance, okay? So all right, so that's the kind of backdrop, and I think what many of us are working on at the moment is essentially integrating these two polarities, this darkness and this light that exists on the planet, and trying to figure out how do we resolve that. Now, when I used to think I want to save the world, I guess what I was clutching at in an unconscious way was the sense of resolution of duality, resolution of dark and light. That is now happening. It is literally happening. I'm so excited to be alive at this time. I'm so excited to be conscious being at this time, to understand enough of the big picture that I can essentially celebrate inside and know that we are doing this now. What I thought was perhaps never possible when I was younger is now actually coming to bear. It is manifesting on the planet. Got full goosebumps as I say that. So it's the truth. And but now I get what we're here to do. Saving the world used to mean to me that we have to go and fight these corrupt beings and protests and write letters, and it somehow seemed impossible. But what I understand now is it's many, many, many actions. It's millions of actions of millions of people combined which is doing the saving. And that doesn't mean that the burden rests on your shoulders alone. In fact, each person, the only thing they have to do is get their own world right? We have to align our own world with what we know to be morally and ethically true. And essentially what we're doing is we're aligning our world with natural law. And natural law is, in a nutshell, do no harm to others. And that's it, really. Do no harm to others. Now, Jesus encapsulated that, didn't he? Many of the spiritual teachings have taught us that we don't need a whole lot of rules. According to the Christian Bible, God gave us only 10 commandments. And when you nut down all the different rules or dictates of each religion, you'll find that they're very much the same. We are at the moment faced with a situation where there are some people on the planet that are really trying to control everything and take away free will and are doing a lot of harm. But right now it is our job to discern the truth of that and to come within and essentially find our own moral compass to decide what's right for us. So no one right now on the planet has the answer to tell you what to do. But if you go within, you will find that there's a lot of balancing and recalibrating that you can do around resolving your judgments on things, coming to a place of acceptance about how things are, honouring both the dark and the light within you, honouring the masculine and the feminine within you, bringing yourself into a state of deep balance, which is going to then create for you a state of abiding bliss. So, it's a win-win, except that you do have to tangle with the shadow. And this is why people are resistant to awakening, to spiritual awakening, because it requires a process of looking within and seeing where we ourselves have been so-called evil or dark. Which brings me to, I guess the catalyst for this video was a very powerful vision that I had a few nights ago when I was inquiring to spirit of a few things, and I really felt that this story would help us understand this idea of saving the world. So I asked, I'll preface this by saying probably my deepest fear that I've carried in this lifetime is around Nazi Germany, and feeling that it was such a horror that occurred in that time, whether that's true or not, because remember, we have to put a question mark over everything now that we've been told in our textbooks, in our media, in our government systems. Absolutely everything needs a question mark, okay? So I caveat with this, but it does seem as if there was this horrific time in Nazi Germany. Whether it existed or not, it's in my my imagination is imprinted in my being as a very scary and horrific thing. And I guess I've always been frightened that I had a past life at this time, and maybe I experienced some of that atrocity myself. So I finally decided to be brave a couple of nights ago, and I inquired to Spirit, did I have a life in Nazi Germany? Was I alive? And I was kind of expecting that if I did have a life, I would have been probably a Jew in a concentration camp, or one of the, I guess, victims of that war. But I was shown myself not as a Jew, but as a German. And the image that I got was of myself sitting in a rather grim-looking grey windowless office. And I was dressed in what felt like a uniform. And I felt that I was working for the government. I was a bureaucrat or a clerk. And I felt my name to be Erwin, or Erwin, as I later Googled it and discovered that it is a German name and it's pronounced Erwin, I believe. But I could see it, Ewirn. And I was in my 40s. When I get these past life memories, it's quite interesting how much I know about myself without not seeing it. I just know, I just intuit, I just understand who I was. And I felt myself to be in my 40s and a very sort of shut down emotionally person. I was certainly quite miserable, but no one would have known it. I feel like I didn't share my feelings with anyone. And I was showing myself at a desk, and I had paperwork in front of me, and I was separating. My job was to separate the paperwork into different piles and stamp that one of the piles. And as I looked closer, I became aware that what I was actually doing was each paper represented a person, and I was separating essentially the piles into Germans and Jews, or Aryans and Jews, and the Jewish people that I was stamping were the ones that were being condemned to go to the concentration camps. So I also inquired about the rest of my life, and I was shown that I had a wife and I had two young children, or sort of maybe 9 or 10 years old. And my attitude to what I was doing, so I knew what I was doing. I didn't fully know, but I had an intuition that what I was doing was, I guess, wrong or evil, and I was certainly out of alignment with natural law. But my attitude was, I just need to survive this. I just need to get through, and I need to focus on my family. So I was in a very third-dimensional kind of consciousness, and I felt like if I could just get through the next few years, it didn't really matter what I was doing as long as I was okay and my family was okay. So it's a very typical third-dimensional way of viewing the world, where we basically do things to satisfy our needs or our families. And I'm not condemning that, okay? When I share this story, I don't actually feel any judgment. But when the memory did come back, what I felt was a lot of sadness and grief. And I understood that my person that I was, my human Erwin, carried this sadness and grief, and it was totally unprocessed. So when we got to the end of the war, I hadn't dealt with this trauma at all. It was a type of, I think they call it bystander trauma. Psychologists have since studied what happens in Nazi Germany and realized that those people who were complicit in what was going on, even if it was like just a clerk or a bureaucratic job like the one I had, we carried with us something called bystander guilt, which is a type of chronic trauma. And so I was shown the end of my life. I asked to see the end of my life, and I didn't last a lot longer. I was maybe in my 50s when I died, a decade or so later. And I was just showing myself on my deathbed, and that I finally, in an effort to reconcile what had happened and this terrible guilt that I was carrying from the war, I said to my daughter at my bedside, my daughter now had very young children, a baby, and I said to her, don't ever let this happen again for your children. Don't ever let this happen again. A little bird, little butcher bird. So wow, I mean, it was a real revelation to realize that my part in the war had been complicit in the evil, essentially. And it was humbling, and it's not the first time that I've explored the fact that I could have been a persecutor or a dark being in the past. Um, but it was a validation of that train of thought, that storyline that I guess I've been working with and integrating, is that all of us have a hand in the evil and all of us have a hand in the good. And we choose to come back into different lives in order to see things from different perspectives. And that vision of my past life, I feel that I was shown it so that I could continue to cultivate compassion for people right now who I feel are perpetuating the evil on the planet. Okay, so there's a lot of, I talked about that chunk of sort of unawakened, or sometimes known as asleep people in the middle, who are not the 30% that are co-creating the positive timeline, but are the ones that are confused, that are just going through their everyday motion, almost robotically, just doing what they're told. Those people, I can cultivate greater forgiveness for that, even if they know that essentially what they're doing is off the moral compass, or transgressing human rights, or a fear-based storyline. Um, that's the best that they can do right now. That's their part in the drama. There's no judgment at all as I speak about it and as I feel into that now. So it's helping me resolve the judgment. And why is that important? Because that's my way of saving the world, right? When we resolve all judgment within, when we can reconcile this dark and light within each human being, we then essentially flower as an enlightened being on this planet. We are able then to be a beacon of that light, or an anchor point for light, or a portal for cosmic source energy. There's many functions that you then have as that enlightened being, to radiate that beautiful power, that beautiful love frequency out to the planet. And it's a frequency, I kind of describe it as like a white hole of goodness. Like a black hole it sucks anything in that's positive and turns it into black. When you think of the metaphor, I'm not so sure what happens in outer space technically with a black hole, but when I think of a black hole, I think of like a vortex of negative energy, inverted energy, where anything that's positive and light gets sucked in and becomes darkness. Okay, so the opposite can be true of an enlightened being or an enlightened state of consciousness, which becomes like a white hole. So anything negative gets sucked into an enlightened being's field and is transmuted automatically into positive. And that positive, whether it's forgiveness or compassion or peace, love, understanding, all of the good things, that ripples out into the collective field and affects everybody. It's a gift that is given, it's shared. Okay, so healing yourself is your greatest service to humanity right now. This union within. And when one is at peace with all of one's different aspects, then you can begin to be at peace with the world. And in that state of consciousness, you actually bring in peace for all. Okay, so this is how we do it, and it isn't about getting out there with placards and protesting and or fighting. However, there are many people who are in service on the planet doing just that right now, so I'm not taking that away from anyone. If you feel called to go and protest, then fantastic, you're meant to do that. I did hear another beautiful lady, I can't remember her name, but she's an Australian teacher, and she was speaking about how the unification of humanity is happening as an analogy to swallows. There's a certain type of bird that when they move in flight, they don't follow one bird at the apex. They don't follow a leader. Sometimes you see flocks of birds and they look like an arrow point, because the head bird is leading everybody else. There's a different type of formation that birds can make, swallows do it, called murmuration. And what it is the swallows are all flying in their own different directions. They're all following their own intuition, but they do it in a group, And what happens is, through their own intuition, they end up creating this incredible pattern that moves through the air. And it can look very poetic and beautiful, and it does move as one. Perhaps a school of fish might be another example, although I'm not sure if fish go in different directions. They probably all follow a leader, but maybe it is another instance of murmuration. Sorry. So these lovely patterns are made, not by following a leader, but by following themselves. Each swallow is following its own inclinations. And that's what we have to do as humanity. Each of us have to follow our own inclinations. And if we do that, we're actually going to come together as one enormous kind of symphony of movement, action, thought, deed, feeling. The universe knows what it's doing. Source knows what it's doing. As soon as each of us aligns to that, then everything will be fine. Okay. It's a beautiful saying by Michael Singer, which says, everything will be okay when you're okay with everything. And you're okay with everything is integration. To sit in a state of acceptance and peace and trust and knowing. Now you need a lot of pieces of the puzzle for that kind of enlightened state to occur. You need to work on faith, which is to trust something greater than you, or a greater part of you, to know that you can't know the whole picture and that your vision is like that, blinkered. But to trust anyway, to go forward just with that, following that intuitive knowing and understanding that intuition is connected to source. So that's faith. And then there's working on your own judgment. When you're judging, when you're hating other people, understanding that it's a reflection of your own resistance to what is. Why is it that that's not okay, that thing that I'm seeing or witnessing? Can you just be okay with everything? Which isn't to say you become a doormat for abuse or anything like that, because you can have your boundaries while still being okay with everything. You can say no. You can let other people be upset and hate on you or do whatever they need to do because they're processing their feelings. And you can cultivate an acceptance of that. So acceptance is not the same as people pleasing and doing what everybody else wants you to do. In fact, those who are taking this path of truly entering the warrior spirit and saving this world are the ones who are going against the grain, who are taking action that other people are disapproving of right now. Standing in your sovereignty might mean that everybody is jeering at you and ridiculing you, and that's just okay. That has to be accepted. If it's not anything that's not accepted within you, is just a reflection of your own resistance, which the inquiry is within. The answers are within. Everything comes back to you. So this is a challenge that we're all facing, but this catalyst of the virus on the planet and the way that's being played out as a combination of dark and light forces at war, within that catalyst, that melting pot of experience, we are each rising to the occasion and growing spiritually. So, whatever those intuitive impulses are within you, follow them. Stop blaming others for what's going on. Remember that you have played a role in the darkness yourself, and we've probably had many, many lives on this planet where we were both characters, and every shade in between, okay? And every aspect is serving. So the dark serves to catapult the light into higher states of consciousness. The dark serves to push us into ascension. The dark serves to highlight that which we resonate with as love. And the dark serves to show us where we still need to work on. So right now we're seeing and witnessing the collective shadow of humanity as it comes into the consciousness. It is there to be witnessed. It is there to be acknowledged as being there. We cannot shift it until we see it. So that's part of the process. And then the second part of saving the world is to be at peace with that. And the third part is to vision what we want to create, which is to reclaim our power as a collective humanity to create. We don't need anyone telling us how the way the world should be anymore. When you come within, you'll find all the answers you need. You don't need textbooks, you don't need courses, you don't need university degrees, you don't need experts, you don't need government officials, you don't need anyone. All the answers are within. So follow what that guidance is, trust that, that's faith, hang on to that, and you'll be doing your work as a foot soldier down here on this planet. Yeah, alright, so I hope that was helpful, and I will come back hopefully with another video soon. Much love to you all. Bye.